And here we go. Hello, everybody. Welcome to episode, I think this is 4 now of our youth group podcast. We've got a large group today, so we'll go around and introduce everybody. I'm your host, Christian, and we'll go this way. And we've got...
My name's Colin.
I'm Andrew.
I'm Xylee.
My name's Eric, and I'm the one that told Christian about the podcast. If we can start one, so yeah.
Nathan.
Lily. Devin.
And our... we got some... We got...
All right, and our special guest is Father Steve.
Ooh, you're taking the reins here.
Yes.
All right, go ahead. You want to introduce him?
So Father Steve is our pastor, right? Our pastor.
Yeah.
Last
time I checked.
I haven't been here for a solid minute.
You've only been here since you were this tall.
Yeah.
I haven't been here in 2 Sundays, so
Okay.
I've been gone.
Yeah, completely changed. Father Steve's out. Linus is also now the new rector.
Okay. So I'm working at Taco Bell.
Yeah. We both got a job at Taco Bell together.
Nice.
Technically, I'm his boss, but we don't talk about it too much.
Oh, gosh, okay.
Well, yeah, as Eric mentioned, we've got Father Steve here today. We're very excited. We've been hoping to have him on for a while, so very, very blessed day. But before we start getting to asking Father Steve some things, let's do some groundwork. So how's everyone's week been? Maybe one thing, because school just started back up, either one thing you've learned that's really interesting, or maybe something about a teacher you really like, or anything that's happened recently that is remarkable.
What has happened recently?
I know.
Something good?
I know it all blends together. It's good.
Something good.
Something good. Yeah, just something good.
That's hard.
I'll start it.
Okay.
For my Avid 2 class, it's my second period. Every Friday we get to do pancakes. So
Make pancakes?
Yeah.
Oh, that's
so,
cool.
Make pancakes and we get to eat it in class.
Nice.
And we put on a movie. It's basically a free period that period. So
That's cool. Nice.
Wait, what period is that?
it's second for me.
It's Avid.
Avid 2.
What does Avid mean?
My Avid's getting shut down.
Oh, I'm sorry, Devin.
What's Avid?
Yeah, what is it?
Advancement via individual determination.
Yeah.
It's an acronym.
So, okay.
It's for high school. It's college. It's for colleges. For if you're in middle school or something like that, then it's prepping you for high school. But for me, it's prepping me for college.
They're prepping us for college inside middle school.
Wow. Very
Well,
good.
that
Do you guys
also-
get college credits for it at all?
Yeah.
Nice. That's right. That's cool. It's similar to a program I did, and let me tell you, it pays off. When you only have to take 4 classes a semester while everyone's drowning with 6 or 7, it helps.
What do you do for the extra hours?
So this was in Phoenix, but this was called...
Be truthful, Christian.
This was called ACE, but I went to Phoenix College while I was in middle school and high school. So I ended up getting my associates by the time I graduated high school.
That's what I'm trying to do.
So it really helps when you're in college. You can it helps you if you have to work, because I had to work in college, so makes it more manageable, or you can just take a really easy schedule, or you can graduate early. So it just gives you a lot of good options. So that's really cool. We have some people who are, maybe not quite in high school yet. So it's just some things to think about, Xylee and Colin and Devin.
Colin's in high school.
Well, you're a freshman, right?
Sophomore, actually.
Well, you just started your sophomore year?
Colin has to be.
Gosh. That's awesome. Well, have you looked into any programs like that?
And scholarships, that kind of thing.
Scholarships, but programs
It's
programs that get you early credits.
Yeah.
I'm taking a few AP classes at the moment.
That's
so
nice.
That does count.
Yeah, that counts.
I'm only doing AP physics. I got moved out of my AP Spanish because seniors needed it because they need 2 years of language.
Yeah.
But I have intro to engineering, and that gives me 3 certifications. So if I take 3 tests, then it'll be my certification.
That's cool.
But I want to go into engineering, mechanical engineering. So
That's what you want to do going forward?
Yeah.
Wow, that's awesome. That's a really good fallback plan for. But you also got them MLB dreams, so it's good to have fallbacks. But that's awesome. And Zyla, you just started taking orchestra, right? What are you playing now?
Violin.
You like it?
Yeah.
That's cool. That's really cool. You know who else plays violin? So if you ever have any questions, I'm sure that Lily would be happy to help. What about you, Nate?
What about me? I suppose I'm on course to take the only AP class for freshmen at my high school offers, which is social studies.
Cool.
I don't know. I want to major in computer science, so I'm like learning JavaScript
Nice.
just on the side.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
You ever dabble in C++ yet?
Heck no.
That stuff's crazy. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's like advanced.
Yeah.
But that's cool.
What's C++?
It's just a
It's-
type of software programming language.
It's really close to like actual machine code. So
Because they've all got different languages they speak, just like people, but they're robots. Yeah, that's awesome. That's a really useful. That's a skill that's definitely not going away anytime soon.
Right.
So,
It's gonna change like everything.
yeah, absolutely.
It's not going away.
yes. What about you, Lily?
I got a lot.
No, okay.
A lot of things, different things, all the things. I'm good.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
You're taking 7 classes, and a lot of extracurriculars.
I'm doing dental assisting now, so that's a certification.
Are you still doing
course.
Stuco?
Yes.
Students government?
Yes, that's the same thing then.
Upward bound?
Yes. I'm doing everything I was doing last year.
College courses?
Why are you asking me? Because I'm doing everything I'm doing that last year.
Not J10.
Yeah, but
You didn't do J10
I did.
last year.
Hey, CT courses are J10. Take that.
That is true though.
If you obviously nobody could see that, but Lily just stuck her tongue out at Devin, so just make that known.
Brett.
It's really hard to figure out who's brother and sister in here, isn't it?
Yeah, I know, that's crazy. That's awesome. Are you enjoying the dental assisting so far?
I just taken a lot of notes. I have to make up notes. I was in Twyla. Friday, so I have to make up notes.
You were in what?
Twyla.
Is that a town?
No.
No.
What's that?
It's a. Do you know what it is?
No, I think isn't it like a class that you take, or is it like a program?
I think
It's
it
a
might have
program.
gone to your high school before. I think last time, maybe. Who knows?
I don't remember what it is, but I remember the name because we did a whole presentation about it, but I can't remember what it is.
Yeah. But it's Greater Tucson Leadership thing. So, or Tucson Youth Leadership acronym. So,
Okay, that's cool.
so I was doing that. So I missed school day classes. I was at school, but I was not in school.
I was gonna say school puts it on though.
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha.
So I have to make up for things. So I'm not looking forward to that. Monday's gonna be very busy.
Did the whole school go to it, or
No.
just? Oh, okay.
It's
Or
just
to the rest.
those people who
I
are
see.
in those programs.
Gotcha.
Like ROTC, same thing with ROTC. If they like have like this waiver and all their teachers sign it or something like that, then they can like skip out of school and then go do something else, like volunteer or something like
Gotcha.
something else. So it'll make the school look good, but like you will also miss assignments. Like you'll go back to them.
So then you have to go back to that
They
same
give
work.
you
So you
more
double
work
up
than
on
you
your
have to
work.
Well,
Oh my gosh.
you don't double
I
up.
do it.
Like for me, for
I
for what we are doing, like the teachers will like give you a later, like they'll assign it later
Oh. Okay.
instead of like assigning it like the due date.
All right, I see. Well, that's good at least. Then you're not like losing your mind with all the schoolwork you get. But...
I have a binder this big.
Mm-hmm.
It's like 2.5 inches.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a lot. We have to take notes for dental all the time. Every day.
Wow.
5 pages.
Well,
per
it's,
day.
there's a lot to the mouth. There's a lot to dental hygiene. So
Yeah.
that makes sense.
It's old people.
That's so cool, though. I mean, I was actually just getting my teeth cleaned this week, and I told the dental assistant about the program, and she's like, "Oh, I've heard of that. That like, yeah, that's like super helpful, and it really leads you into getting the job sooner than most people have to wait like a long time to even get the training. So you have a leg up on a lot of people, and it's also a very stable job or career path." But,
I have after school classes too, so I'm doing the healthcare foundations one right now, so I can move on to a specialty next year.
Mhm.
I'm probably gonna do EMT or medical assistant.
Nice.
Next year.
That's awesome.
And then,
Yeah.
well, tell us a little bit about yourself, Father Steve. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Are we? Oh, I got one more thing before we transition.
No.
Hold on. Well, listen, I'm giving you guys like 5 to 10 minutes to ask all the questions you want. But I thought we'd give the whole rest of the podcast to Father Steve. So let me ask one quick question.
Okay.
I want to hear from you guys, and then we'll go to Father Steve. So the youth question this week, and take a second to think about it. I'll tell you Brooke's answer because it was really funny. What's the difference between having information and having wisdom? So think about that for a second.
It's basically the same thing.
Think it's the same thing?
Having a deeper explanation for the information,
Deeper
Like-
explanation.
like understanding it, so you can give an explanation.
Okay.
Pretty much.
So maybe, yeah.
I think information is more related to, like what you know, whereas wisdom is more about like how you think.
I like that. Yeah. It's the ability to put that information to use.
Yeah.
I see. Okay. Riley or Colin, what are you guys thinking?
Yeah, I was just gonna say what he said.
Yeah. Just the ability to apply it.
Yeah, like wisdom's like more like actually like applied rather than just academic, kind of like more like I try to phrase it really more like knowledge of everyday life, kind of like of how like the world is, rather than just it's not like the term like street smarts doesn't quite apply, but I'm not sure what other phrase to use.
Yeah, no, I see. Yeah. Yeah, it's like the difference between having Google explain something to you and having like Bill Nye the Science Guy explain it to you, right?
Yeah,
The
basically.
lived
yeah.
experience of that. Okay, that's cool. What do you think, Xylee?
The same.
The same? Yeah. Brooke put it in a really funny way when Father Steve asked. She said, well, you know, wisdom's like you're old. Wisdom's like you're an old person. And information's like, you know, like school.
Yeah, a lot
Like,
of people
okay,
think that.
Yeah.
A lot of people think that you can't have wisdom, you can't put all that information together into something that's important in life unless you have life experience.
Yeah.
But what today's first reading, Solomon, he was just a kid, and he had all kinds of wisdom.
Yeah.
So that's not necessarily true.
Yeah.
And I have seen you guys do lots of things, and many of you have a level of wisdom that many adults don't. So
That's true.
You know, don't cut yourself short there.
Mm-hmm.
Wisdom is something you can develop, and many of you have done that.
Yeah, I agree. And I think what we also see, I think a lot of kids are born with that innate wisdom. And I think it's something, if you don't cultivate, I think it can, you know, start to fade away if that's not something that we focus on and try to, you know, manifest every day. And you know, because there's a difference between, being the smartest one in the room and being the wisest one. You know, I think the wisest person tends to listen well, you know, they tend to respect others and acknowledge all of the ideas that are presented before saying something. And I think you guys really cultivate that a lot. You guys are great listeners, you're very kind and compassionate. So I would say we have a very wise group here. So anything else? Any other ideas about it? No? Cool. Well, Eric, why don't you go ahead and I don't want to take your job from you. Why don't you go ahead and introduce the the man we have here.
Oh, okay. Hi, Steve. And, like, tell us a little bit more about yourself. Like, if you went to college, did you finish it? Like, stuff
Okay.
like that.
Okay. What an interesting question to start because that's going to open a whole can of worms here. So let's go. I did not finish college. I started in college, and some of you will get this, I invented with another guy a pro football strategy game. And I don't think any of you know anything about that, do you?
Are you being serious?
I did. So it was a game based on the previous season in pro football, and every play that happened in the actual pro football season was in the game. We built it into the game. So
Was this a computer game, a board game?
this was a board game before, it was right on the edge of when this could be done on a computer. So I was doing it all by hand. Calculators had just come out, and I had a Texas Instruments calculator that was as big as my hand that cost me $130.
Oh, yeah.
And that's how I calculated all of these all of the calculations for the game. And every player in pro football had their own chart, and you could have move players back and forth.
Are we talking American football or are we talking football?
I'm
Soccer.
speaking of American national football.
Okay.
So we invented this game, and we marketed the game, and I was spending 1,000 hours a year doing all the calculations to put the game out. So I didn't have time to go. At some point I had to stop, and I was also working because I grew up in a relatively poor family, so I was working at the time, and so we put this out. So when I got the call to the priesthood, which was in my middle-aged life. Some people, when they reach middle age, they go and buy a Ferrari. I wanted to become a priest. So I did that in my middle life. And so I had to take the GRE test. Have you guys know about GREs? That's the college equivalent test that you have to take to prove that you can work on a college level. I had to do all those tests to get into seminary. And I was the only person in my seminary class who had not graduated from college. Wow. It is very, very unusual, and usually they won't even let you in. But I did really well on the tests, and they let me in. And when I finished seminary, the professors at the seminary all took a vote, and they voted unanimously to give me a master's degree. Whoa. Even though I didn't have a college degree.
Wow.
So it was very crazy.
Wow.
So it's crazy that you asked that question first, Eric, because I am the only person that I know of who has become a priest who had not graduated from college first.
Eric's very intuitive, so it makes sense that he would pick up on a really...
Yeah, and you all, I mean, I was in a poor family, and I had to pay for college, and I had to work all the time to do it, and I just couldn't do both.
Yeah.
So we sold that pro football strategy game. We did it for like 5 years, and there were probably, I don't know, maybe 3,000 or so on the market that people had that bought, but that wasn't enough to keep doing this at that level. And another game manufacturer came to me and said, "Can I buy the game from you?" Wow. So that's what we ended up doing, is selling it to another game company.
What's it called?
Yeah.
It's called THE Pro Football Game. The Pro Football Game. THE stood for Tabletop Home Excitement.
Wow. I don't think any of us do that.
I don't think not many people in the church know that.
Wow.
Although I did do a sermon once about the issues with concussions in pro football.
Yeah.
And how I've moved away from pro football because of that. And I did tell people in the congregation about my game then.
Wow.
So my grandma, pretty much.
Yes.
She's been here for a very long time.
Yes.
Wow. And then picked up baseball almost solely.
Well, yeah, and then I think you all know that I'm a much bigger baseball fan.
A
than-
Baltimore fan.
So when did you writing? Because Father Steve wrote a book about the Baltimore. What season was it? The 80.
It was, gosh, you guys are going to laugh. As the 1989
89.
baseball season.
So
it was
they-
another
they were
lifetime
having-
ago that I wrote that book, and I was living in St. George, Utah at the time, but satellite dishes had just come on the market. I had this gigantic
Nice.
20-foot satellite dish so I could watch all the games. So I was able to watch all the games, and I was there for some of them. And I wrote this book about the Orioles from a fan's perspective. It was the year after the Orioles had the worst season in the history of baseball.
Oh my God.
And they lost 28 games in a row at the beginning of the season.
Yeah, 20. It was 20.
That's
Yeah.
crazy.
So this was the next year, and it was built around the excitement of that year and what it was like for a fan
Only up from
to
here.
go from the bottom to competing for the top.
Okay.
So, and I'm very proud of that book. That was really important
Yeah.
to me. And a publisher in Utah did that book, and they believed in me. And that book sold out in 2 printings.
Whoa.
We had 2 printings of that book, and it totally sold out.
So that's incredible. Maybe you should talk to the Orioles front staff and see if they can put it on their website or something.
Well, they sold it when the
Oh,
book
they
came
did?
out.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, they sold it at the stadium, and I did a lot of interviews back there.
Wow.
It's funny, I did the first interview back in Baltimore. I was out here, but we did it by phone. And all the people in Utah who had published the book were on the line listening, and they got off and said, "Where did that accent come from?" So when I started talking to all these people in Baltimore, my little Baltimore accent came back. So
That's funny. That's awesome.
I mean, now look at the Orioles now. They're pretty good. I mean, I think if you did another book, I think it would go good.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, this is the time to do it now.
That's true.
Because he did the book like when they had the worst season.
Yeah.
right.
But they were like for the last 5 years they were like in the below. They were like they weren't doing good. So like now they're doing good. They might win. They might win it. I'm gonna
true.
be honest. They might win it.
They're looking.
Their only competition is the Yankees. I'm gonna be honest.
You don't even think the Diamondbacks have a chance?
No, I
What?
don't think the
Bro, we
Diamondbacks
got
have a
like.
chance.
I think we got a chance this year.
You never know.
It's true.
You never know.
We're only. You know who's not getting it? Them White Sox. Am I right?
That's pretty safe.
Yeah. All right. Well, I have a few. Wait, give me 1 second. I have a few topics and questions I wrote out, just because I thought I'd be smart, play it safe. So, Father Steve, we talked about when you got the call for the priesthood, but can you talk to us maybe about, what that call felt like, when you first initially got it, and was it an easy decision to make, or did you struggle with it at first?
Okay, that's a really good question. I was going to a church in St. George, Utah, and we had a program on a Paiute Indian reservation where we did a tutoring program for all the kids on that reservation. And I was really moved by that, and I got very connected with all the people on that reservation. I'm still very good friends with all of them now. And that experience made me start thinking that maybe I should consider the priesthood. I actually thought about the diaconate at that time. I thought I should be a deacon. I had considered being a priest when I was in high school, and I was in the Catholic Church then, and I had so many issues with the Catholic Church that I just couldn't do it. I was concerned about the Catholic Church's stance on women, and women couldn't be a part of the church or at the table. I was concerned about issues like birth control and the church's stance on things like that. So I just couldn't do it when I was in high school. I was being groomed to be a priest, and I felt totally disconnected from the church. But when I found the Episcopal Church, I felt at home again. And after I found the church, and it had the same liturgy as the Catholic Church, but socially it was much closer to what I believed. That made me start thinking again about being an ordained person. At first, I thought I was called to be a deacon, who just serves and doesn't preach and celebrate. Because I thought I was just there to serve people, like these people on the Paiute Reservation and other folks. But when I went to the Commission on Ministry in Utah, I got finished the whole process, and I got to the end, and I spent a weekend getting interviewed by a bunch of people. I did 8 one-hour interviews, one right after the other, with lunch in between. And I got finished that process, and they said, we think that you are called to be ordained, but we don't think you're called to be a deacon. We think you're supposed to be a priest. Wow. So they came to me and suggested that. So I started discerning about that. And I'll go back. When I was in that church, I had 7 people come to me in that church and say, have you ever thought about being a priest? So when all those people came to me and all of this kept happening in a row, I started to say, I need to listen to this. I mean, this is obviously God's voice coming in multiple ways. And to answer the final part of that, it was very hard to make that decision. I had a whole career. I was doing quite well financially and in other ways. I was running a printing company at the time. So it was very difficult to say, I have to give all this up and do this. Wow. But I truly felt I was called to do it, and it's the best decision I ever made.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that.
Yep.
And your first parish was in northern Arizona, correct?
My first parish was in Page.
Page.
So you all know Page. So you went there as a youth
Yeah.
group,
Yeah.
a lot of you. In fact, I think you stayed at the church.
Yep.
So that was the church where I served. It was a little teeny tiny church when I got there. There were 6 people there holding up the walls when I arrived.
Yeah.
And when I left, we had an average Sunday attendance of 80. And we built that church that you saw. None of that was there.
Yeah. And what I love about that church in Page is there's like 4 other churches nearby that are all different, either denominations or completely different.
It's actually 12.
It's 12.
So on the main drag in Page, it's called Church Row, Lake Powell Boulevard. Mm-hmm. And what happened was that Page was a government town to build the dam on the Colorado River. Mm-hmm. So they gave any denomination who promised to build a church in 2 years free land to build it. And of course, like any government agency, they put all the land right next to each other. So there are actually 12 churches right on the same street.
I bet that street gets packed on Sundays.
It makes church shopping very different.
For sure.
You just go down and go into each one.
That's awesome. Well, the next thing I wanted to talk about is your sermon writing, because I think we can all agree that that's a skill of yours that you've essentially mastered. So what were your early days of sermon writing like, and how I guess did you cultivate that skill?
Wow, you guys got good questions here. So at the beginning, I'll be honest with you, I didn't think I would be able to preach. It was one of the reasons I thought I should be a deacon and not a priest, because I was not good at public speaking. I took public speaking classes in high school, and I was so nervous. I got sick all the time when I made my little speech in high school. So if you all feel that way, don't panic, okay? I mean, you can get past this. So So when I first started preaching, I was so petrified that I could hardly stand there. The pulpit would shake because I was trying to hold it, and everything would shake. I was so nervous. And the first 3 times I preached, I got sick after each time I preached. But then something happened to me. And it wasn't me, it was the Holy Spirit. And I started to realize that if I calmed myself down and listened to what the Holy Spirit was saying, that I could figure out how to present this to people. So as soon as I calmed down, that started happening, and this became easier. And then I would preach, and I didn't get sick anymore. And this Holy Spirit thing pushed me through the whole process. So public speaking as a priest, preaching is totally different than other kinds of public speaking, at least for me. I still get crazy nervous when I'm doing speaking in a different setting outside the church, but when I'm in, I don't feel that way anymore. I can truly feel the Spirit pushing me through the process. As far as how I do it, I think you all know I'm a writer by trade. I mean, that's what I do. I write. That's why I wrote a book. That's why I've written all those other articles and things. That's how I think. I think by writing. So I actually write out all of my sermons. I'm holding today's up, word for word, because that's how I think. Now, when I get in the pulpit, I sometimes go away from this and go in different directions, but I write it out word for word. And on the average, it takes me about 18 hours to finish the whole process of writing, of going through all the work of doing the history and what's called the exegetical work, all the work you do to figure out what the readings are saying and how to present that in the present day situation. So that process takes about 18 hours, and most of the time when I'm finished, I go, okay, this is it. But occasionally I'll still get finished and go, this is terrible. And I'll start over. So.
Well, I know this just because I work, in the office, obviously, but have Thursdays always been your sermon writing day? Or?
Yes. When I was in Page, it was a little different because it was a small church, and I had to get a lot of things from St. George to in the church. So at the beginning, we even had music. I had an organist in St. George play the music, and I recorded it and put it in a organ at the church and play the music that way. So at the beginning, I was going to St. George, which is a 2.5-hour drive from Page every week, back and forth. So I wrote a lot of sermons in that time I was driving back and forth. So when I say write, I didn't write them, but I recorded them, and I would come up with all the ideas, and then when I got back, I would write it out.
I see.
I also tend to do a lot of deliberation about sermons in the middle of the night. So by Wednesday night, if I just don't have any idea what to write, I get quite upset with God and say, "Come, give me a break here. Give me something here." And most often that comes to me in the middle of the night. So Thursday morning between 2 a.m. and 5 a.m., there's a lot of work going on in my brain. And a lot of stuff happens. So that time, and then the time in the shower is when I get a lot of ideas and how I do it. But Thursday, yes, has usually been the day that I then tried to write that out.
Nice.
Sometimes I get to Thursday and I got nothing. And I sit there and go, okay, give me something, So, and I will tell you that is a lot of pressure. The expectations in this church for preaching are way, way high, and I need to get there. So it's a lot of pressure, and it makes me really nervous. But it's much easier than it was at the beginning.
And last question I have about sermon writing, we can move on. But in your own opinion, have your sermons always pushed the envelope? Because that's something that, I think a lot of people appreciate about them, is that they, we'll go into this later, but they center around earth justice, migrant justice, social justice. Have they always been so? I don't want to say provocative, but provocative.
No, I think that's a fair question.
Yeah.
I mean, the simple answer is yes. I decided that I wanted to be a priest for multiple reasons, but one of them was that I was just upset by how many people were being hurt by society that had no reason to get hurt. At the time, it was especially gay people and anybody whose gender was different. And I felt this calling to take care of them and to change the church's stance there. At the time, the church was not blessing same-sex marriages. So I really felt a call to do that. So I was doing that from the very beginning, because that was really, really important to me, that we make that change in the church. And I'm happy to say that the church has come a long way since then, and I hope I was on the forefront of that movement to make that happen. The other reason that really influenced me is I really got tired of going to bad funerals. And what I mean by that is, I'll tell you a story. There was a high school kid in the church in St. George where I was, and he went to school in Cedar City, the town just north of St. George. And Cedar City is high, it's 5,500 feet, and St. George is low, 2,500 feet. Wow. So one January day, he was coming back from Cedar City, and he hit black ice on the highway. You guys have probably never experienced that, but you can't see it, and it was just a sheet of ice the whole time. He hit the ice. He rolled over. He was killed in the accident, and his poor parents were obviously devastated. And I went to that funeral, which was a gigantic funeral in the amphitheater in St. George, because it was the only building big enough to fit all the people that were coming to this service. And the minister got up there and he said, I don't know what his parents did wrong, but they did something to allow God to kill him. And at that moment, I said to myself, I am never letting this happen again to any parent or anybody in this situation. So I promised myself that I would always represent every person well when I did a burial for them, and that I would spend hours and hours to make sure I understood the person, who they were, what made them tick, and then honor them as best I could. That moment was a major factor in my life, and it really moved me to do this. Those people are still very close to me to this day, his parents. In fact, his father built the baptismal font in Page. Oh, wow. Because I commissioned him to do it. Yeah. So did you all see the big copper thing outside, and then we drew the stream inside? Yeah. He made that. Wow. So the father of the kids was killed there. So.
Wow. Well, I can't think of a worse thing to say at a funeral. So
well, and that was the theology of this guy, and I just promised myself I would never let that happen to another person, that if I could possibly avoid it.
You put a lot of work into creating very intentional and loving funeral services, so thank you for that. Kurt Fisher's was especially moving.
You do our family does thing memorials here too.
Yes. Yep.
Okay, the next topic that we have is about GSP's Earth Justice, Migrant Justice, and Social Justice. So, I guess the first question, and it could be as short or long of an answer as you want, but how do you feel like GSP walks the walk with our slogan? What are some ways that you're proud of that we do that for others?
So let's talk about the earth justice first. That was another reason I became a priest. I was so tired of never hearing anything in church about God's creation, about the whole world, and the connection between the natural world and what the church was doing. And I was frankly appalled that there was nothing happening. So that was the other reason I was moved to become a priest. I really wanted to change that. So in the last parish, I started this season of creation and to try to connect people to God through creation. And when I started it, I don't know, there might have been 10 other churches in the country doing something like this. Mm-hmm. There's hardly anybody. And now we are in a place where the Episcopal Church has embraced this, as well as many other mainline churches. It's in our book of occasional services now, the whole season of creation. And this church went out of their way to walk that walk. So I think Nathan's talk about creation, I think that is a great example of what happened at this church and why it was so important. Yeah. And I think what he said influenced people way beyond this church and made a major difference in the way the church does this. So now I think it's normal for people to see the theological connection between what the church has always taught, but no one has ever picked up about creation. So that's what I'm most proud about, what's happened at this church, because this church really made that message go out to the whole world, not just here. So I think that was the big part. And then the migrant justice part came, to be honest, during the presidency of the last president, whose name we don't say in this church. So, and when that happened, many people were in danger of being not just deported, but as you probably all remember, children were separated from their parents at the border. It was just an awful time. So this church made a stance that they would do everything they could. So, we've had 2 people in sanctuary here, and now we have this Venezuelan family here. So we're individually taking care of people. We know that that's just one little drop in the bucket, but it's not for the people that we've been able to protect here. So that's how that began, and why, and that's very important to this parish on lots of levels. Okay, and then the social justice is just to wrap up the whole package and say we're about this for everybody, not just for the earth, and not just for people that are being detained at the border, but for everybody.
And we've really stepped up as Arizona and Tucson has fallen with assisting those unhoused. This year specifically, we've really stepped up the program to Joseph's Pantry and everything.
Yeah, I'll tell you all, so you all know 9 to 12, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, we have meals for people and food to take home and do all that work. And we also have a social service part of that where people can come in and talk about what they really need, and we try to help them figure out how to solve those problems. So that's really, really important to us. That program has grown tremendously. We would love it for it to go away, that we don't have to do it anymore.
Yeah.
But there are so many people in need now, and it just keeps growing. I'll also share with all of you that that's not easy. People in this neighborhood, you all know this is a fairly upper middle income neighborhood, and people in this neighborhood complain about what we're doing. Just about weekly, I get some complaint about what we're doing because people don't want homeless people in their neighborhood, and they're very concerned about that, and I get that. But when you make believe that doesn't exist, I don't think that helps anybody. So those are the kinds of conversations we have with the neighborhood to try to say to them, you know, you can't just hide and make believe this doesn't exist. We need to care for these people. And most of the time, we've been able to win folks over, or at least have them tolerate what we're doing. Occasionally, we don't even get there, but so I just want you to know that that's always a battle too. It's not an easy thing to do what we're doing on lots of levels.
Yeah, Father Gary will tell you that too.
Yes, he's in the middle of it all the time.
Yeah. All right, and the last question I have before I open it up for everyone else to ask their questions is talking about youth and children ministry. Why is it important to you, and why is it important to you other than just growing the church?
Okay. Good question. So the very first thing that I did when I got to Grace St. Paul's is say, why don't we have a full-time children's director or youth leader? Because it was not being, the church was not, it was not their priority at the time. Let's just put it that way. So that was the first thing that I wanted to change. So we hired a full-time person right then. We didn't have money to pay for this, but I believe that it's the most important thing that we can possibly do is to help children and youth figure out what's going on in this crazy world that we're living in now. And you guys have way more to deal with than I ever had to deal with when I was your age. And living in this world is really, really difficult. So I think the most important thing that we can do as a church, the very most important thing, more than all those other things we just said, is make sure we have a safe place for children and youth, and that you have a place where you can question things and ask the hard questions and know that it's going to be safe for you, and a place where you can always go where you're going to be safe. I don't think that has anything to do with growing the church or any of that. I think that's what the church is called to do, and when we need to do that for children first, because they're the ones who are under the most pressure in the world we live in right now, and I think that's really, really obvious. So I've tried to make that a priority from the very, very beginning, and as long as I'm here, it'll stay at the top of the priority list.
Awesome. Alrighty, guys. Well, let's open it up for any questions from you guys.
Okay, be gentle. Don't hurt me. Just kidding. You should have heard what the young adult group did today.
I heard about that.
What did the young adult group do?
So the young adult group invited me to one of their gatherings, and it was at a beer joint.
Mm-hmm.
So
Was it Hop Shop?
Yes, it was Hop Shop. So first I had my beer, and then they were all easy questions then, and then they started hitting me. How come you don't talk about God as a woman more often? How come? I mean, they just laid it on me, all this heavyweight theological stuff. So hit me with whatever you want. I'm just kidding. So,
Even harsher stuff. Come on.
seriously, whatever you want to know, I'll do my best.
No, I guess I can open this up for anyone because I want to see your perspective. I said it to the last person that was here, I think.
Where's my grandma?
No, the last person.
Danny?
No.
Pastor
The
Dell?
last
Pastor Dell?
The first,
Yes, the
Pastor
first
Dell?
one, the first one. What's your perspective on life? Like, what's the meaning of life for you?
Wow. Wow.
What's the meaning of life?
Yeah.
So that's it.
Easy.
Just
a little
the
softball one
meaning of
for you.
No problem. Way to go, Eric.
He cuts through.
Okay, so that is a very big question. And I try to answer that question in different forms almost every Sunday in different ways. But I'll just generally speaking, I think that we are on earth to take care of one another and to make life better for one another, to protect people who can't protect themselves, and to be in a place where we can see God's presence in the world when no one else can see it, and help people to see the connection between people and the earth and creation and God. So I think that's what the meaning of life is all about, is to help get people to the place where they can see how they can help other individuals, help protect the earth itself. And I, as I've said in sermons before, I believe that's the evangelism of our time, that we need to get people to the place where they understand that we've abused the earth for a long, long time, and we have an opportunity as the church to change that, and we need to do that. So I think that's what the meaning of life is all about, doing that for people and for the earth.
So, why do you think, if that's like the meaning of life and that's what God intends for everybody, why do you think humans are naturally inclined to go against that and to serve in their own best interest?
You guys are really good.
You thought you had it hard with the adult group.
So, do you think that's the case? Do you think
Well,
humans
I think
are
there's
naturally
more
Go ahead.
darkness than.
Yeah, because in the world, I feel like everyone has seen it in the world. Like there's people,
lots of evidence.
there's people that fight back, that don't want to accept the fact that like you need to help one another. They fight, they do all of this, like drug abuse and all of that. They fight against it. So
The stance I'm going to take is, I believe that people are naturally good, but they are so beaten down in the world that we live in that they either give up or find another path. I could be wrong, but my sense is that people don't want to be mean-spirited, and they don't want to be negative, and they don't want to do the stuff that's hurting other people, but because the world is so difficult to operate in, that they lose track of their calling and what the world's supposed to be all about. So I think what we must try to do is help people see that, is help people see that by being the people that are taking care of others and protecting each other, that everything changes and everything looks different. And it's really, really difficult because you're right. I mean, there are so many people that seem so negative and even dark. I do believe that evil itself exists in the world. I don't believe that it's just a construction of humanity. I think evil does exist, but I think in the long run, good can overpower it if we do that. Am I
Yes.
answering your question?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
So, like, what do you think, if humans aren't inherently the source of evil, then what do you think it is? Like, is it the devil or God's punishment?
Yeah, these are really good questions. And I don't mean to say that people do not create evil. They absolutely do, and there's no question about that. But I also believe that that evil exists innately in the world beyond the evil that human beings cause. So I don't know if you want to call that the devil, because I think that takes us down a really, really crazy path, where we're pitting God against this other evil force. But yes, I think there is this innate thing that I just want to call evil, and not personify into anthropomorphize it into a devil character. But I think that evil naturally exists on its own.
So you think it's like universal, like it's in like absolutely everything?
I do.
And so God, it has to be, it has to have at least some power, like that God, because wouldn't God want to create a world without evil?
Okay, man, you guys just asking me really good questions. So let's think about that. I mean, if God created a world where there was no evil and you didn't have any suffering and anything, think about what that would look like and what that world would turn into. I don't know about you guys, but the biggest lessons I've had in my life are when the worst things have happened to me. So I'm trying to give you an example that isn't too heavyweight. So I'll do this one. So when I was living in Southern California, I was fired from my job because the company that I left on the East Coast bought that company. And when they signed the contract, there was a clause in it that said that Keplinger would be gone by the time they got there. So it was just spiteful people, and it was just this evil thing. There was no reason to do that, but they chose to do that. But because of that, I ended up getting the chance to move to St. George, and I discovered this church, and these people started asking me about the priesthood, and all these things started happening to me, none of which would have happened if I hadn't suffered that terrible, terrible thing that happened to me there. So I don't mean to say that God punishes us. I don't believe that. But I believe that evil exists and that God allows all that to happen because that's how we all evolve, that's how we learn, that's how we become better people, and that's how we build a better world. So I hope that makes sense.
So pain it's less of a punishment and more of a teacher.
A learning experience.
A learning experience. I'm wondering if I should say this or not.
I mean,
All right, you guys can handle this. So in seminary, people walked around with these buttons that had those 4 letters on it.
Mm-hmm.
And it stood for another bleeping growth experience. Okay? Obviously not. And the whole point was that in seminary you kept questioning everything that you believed about God, everything that you thought you understood about the world, and you kept going through this process where you went, oh my gosh, everything I've thought is wrong. Mm-hmm. And people lost their faith there and all kinds of stuff. So everybody started saying, well, we need to just look at this as another growth experience, that the opportunity that we've had to do this. And it's true. You're absolutely right. And I do think that's how people change and how people become better at what they're doing. We all evolve. So yeah, I don't think pain is a punishment at all. Today I talked about the fact that wealth is not a gift from God. Some people think that. Lots of people do. There are pastors out there on TV preaching that if you're good, that God's going to give you all this money. That's bull. I mean, that's so crazy. Look at Jesus. If Jesus was the best person ever. How come he didn't have all this money and he was so poor? It just doesn't work like that. And it's the same thing with suffering, I think. And the people that get this the most, I'll tell you, are usually the people that don't have two nickels to rub together.
Yeah.
I don't have to explain Jesus to most of those folks. They just get it.
Yeah.
But people that are rich, it's much harder to understand what's going on in the Gospels.
What does Jesus say? It's easier to look through the eye of a needle than for a rich person to.
Yep. So there's another growth experience. So that phrase was, it is easier for a camel to fit through the eye of a needle than it is for a rich person to get into heaven. But it's probably not what actually is said, because some monk copied this down, and the word camel in Greek is Camelos, and there's another word that's spelled Camelas, and that word is hauser. Does anybody know what a hauser is? You guys, how could you know? You're not anywhere near water. A hauser, like when you're at the ocean, it's those gigantic things of rope that they use to tie boats up to the dock. You know, those gigantic things. Okay? I bet you that some monk copied down O instead of A, and it was much easier for a hauser to go through an eye. What, a camel? That doesn't make any sense. So anyway, there's a lot of those kind of things.
I have a question.
Okay.
So I had this really interesting conversation with my grandma Vonna, not my grandma.
Okay.
So a different person.
Yep.
So she was talking to me when she first moved down here. She's had a really hard time. She's moved down here with absolutely nothing, so she feels really bad about herself all the time.
Okay.
So she was talking to me about karma. She was talking to me about how she feels like karma is all around her all the time, and she feels like everything that's happened to her that's made her into this situation is all because she did something in her past that caused it. And then she started talking about how we commit, like, we're getting karma now because of what we did to the earth and like stuff like that.
Right.
So do you believe in like karma and like how that happens?
Dang, you guys, how do you keep doing this? So that's a really good question, and I think that's really similar to Nathan's question. In the Western world, we call it evil and the devil and punishment, and in the Eastern world, it's called karma. That whole idea that something you did in a past life or even in this life, you're getting paid back for, either positively or negatively. But just the way I understand that God does not give people wealth to give them a gift, I don't think that karma makes any sense. Yes, because of what we're doing to the earth, we've created all of climate change and all of that. So yes, but that is a direct result of what we did to the earth. Do I think that if somebody does something wrong, that in later life they're going to pay for that? No, I don't think it works like that at all. And I'm going to go so far as to tell you that I'm really a universalist. I don't believe that God punishes anybody like that. So no, I don't think karma is a real deal. I think we do things bad, and we ruin things like we've done to the earth, and that causes all kinds of issues. But that's not karma. That's us doing crazy stuff.
So, how do you separate? Because obviously Jesus has, he's talked about hell. It's it's one of the very important, like, it's
Yeah.
So how do you? I just mean, like, how do you separate what, because obviously you believe, you also trust Jesus and like follow a lot of the things he says. So how do you separate like what he says that you
Okay,
separate the truth from?
Yeah. No, those are really good questions. So I'm going to just be honest with you here, and this might take you to a place you don't necessarily want to go right now, but I don't believe that Jesus ever said anything about hell. So we have 4 Gospels in the Bible, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. So the Gospel of John was written way after Jesus lived, about 75 years after Jesus lived. And in the Gospel of John, Jesus says these really long pages worth of stuff. We're in them now. I am the bread of life. I am this. I am that. And lots of things about hell. I don't think that Jesus said any of that stuff, because I don't think there's any human being who could remember 75 years later what Jesus said. I think the Gospel of John is about Christ. Christ is not Jesus. Christ is the spiritual image of Jesus after Jesus has died, okay? So when I say Christ, I'm talking about the post-Easter person, the person that rose, that ascended, not the human being that was on earth. So to be perfectly honest, and I've done a lot of study of Scripture to get to this place. I think all of that stuff about Jesus saying something about hell was not written by him. It was written by later people.
Interesting.
And I don't just say that because I don't like that.
Right.
I say it because of all the study that I've done
Yes.
of the biblical text and where it came from. And lots of people have done that kind of work. And I think the things that we know that Jesus said are the short, pithy sayings that he said, because those are the kind of things people would remember all those years later. And I think we can be really sure about that. But when Jesus has this long narrative in the Gospels, I think that's Christ. I don't think it's Jesus. So that's how I get to that place. So if, for example, if you just read the Gospel of Luke and no other Gospel, there's nothing in there about hell, and it's a very universal story about how Jesus understands what happens to all of us later. And I tend to think that that's more accurate.
Devin, you raising your hand?
Go, Devin.
So, do you think that the religions that do believe in hell are wrong?
Wow. Wow, you guys, these are so good. So I don't think I have the ability to judge what religion is right and what religion is wrong. So I don't think it's fair of me to make those decisions because I could be totally wrong. All of this stuff I've told you might be wrong. I do my best to try to understand God and understand where God's coming from and what's going on. So I try not to judge other religions. Now, the place that I deviate from that is if a religion is hurting somebody, if it's hurting the earth or hurting people, then that's where I draw the line and say, this can't happen. I don't care what you believe, but we can't allow you to be hurting others. And that's how I make those decisions.
Okay.
Okay.
So, what has led you to put your faith in Jesus as opposed to like Muhammad, or because there's like, have you studied the like historical evidence, or if you can't judge like what religion is right or wrong,
Mm-hmm.
is it like God's voice, or just?
Yeah. So because of let me step back. When I was in Utah, I had the chance to go see the Dalai Lama in Salt Lake City, and the Dalai Lama is a really good guy,
Wow.
and I really respect him. And when he, about halfway through one of his talks, he said to all of us, because the room was mostly Christian, some Jews, maybe a few Muslims, and he said, I am not suggesting that any of you become Buddhist. We all have our ways of understanding how God has operated in our lives, and we all have different paths to get there. And the way you were brought up has something to do with that, and I get that. However, I believe that this and this and this in Buddhism can teach all of us lessons. And that is exactly how I feel about this. If I can learn something important from the Buddha, and I have, or from Mahatma Gandhi, or somebody else in the Hindu religion, I learn from those things all the time. So, for example, in Islam, Muslims believe, as many of you know, that you should never make an image of God, that's sacrilegious. And the reason they believe that is because they believe God is so beyond our thought process that it would be wrong for us to try to image God or try to figure out any way to do that. So that understanding of God as the holy other, that's really influenced me. And I've learned a lot from Hinduism because of that, and from Islam. So the paths that we take to God are paths that we've taken to God, and I've learned from lots and lots of different world religions as a result of that. I have a bumper sticker in my office that says "God's too large for one religion." And I believe that. I think there is truth in many faith traditions. I especially look at the ancient faith traditions that have been with us for thousands of years, not so much the ones that have started in the last 50 years, but ones that have a history of that. And I've learned from all of them. I choose to be Christian and to be in the path that I am because I understand what Jesus was saying better than I do some other faiths. But that doesn't mean that I don't learn from all of them. And, there are faiths that are just conglomerations of different faiths, like Baha'is. And what they try to do is, so one week they look at the Buddhist tradition, and then the next week they look at the Islamic tradition. And that's good, but that's not, I need to sink my teeth into something deeper than that. So that's why I'm Christian, and that's why Jesus is important to me.
Along with what Nathan said, how do you feel about the people, like some people, especially the older generation, I've heard this a lot from, but they were like, ever since the time when they were 2 years old up until now, they had never thought about even considering following another religion because that's just not how they were raised.
Right.
How do you feel about that, like, way of, like, putting people...
So I think people that close themselves off to any other religious tradition are closing themselves off to great learning and expanding their understanding of God. So whereas somebody might just say, well, I'm not going to be another religion, that doesn't mean that they can't study other religions and learn from them. And I think that's important for all of us to do that. So yeah, I don't think it's helpful to close your mind to other possibilities.
All right, guys, we got time for one more question.
I got this.
Okay.
And I think this one will close it off.
Okay.
Because I feel like this is like an ending question. When do you think like all of us will have peace? Like, when do you think, like, all of us will have peace? Like, the people will have peace?
So, the way Jesus talks about this is some place called the kingdom of God. And the kingdom of God is not, as a lot of people have thought of it, as us going somewhere after we die, and that is going to be our peace. The kingdom of God is much broader than that for Jesus. He talks about how we can create that kingdom on earth. So, and I believe that that's what all of us need to be striving toward, is creating that kingdom of God on earth. Will we ever create total peace on earth and live in that kind of euphoria? I'm guessing no.
Yeah.
I'm sorry to say. I think that will be constantly be a battle and something that we always need to be striving toward. But that striving is the peace. So I think that all of us can get to that peace ourselves. And with all this other stuff going around us, I think we can create that peace by striving to make it happen, striving to make the kingdom of God happen. So I think all of us can be at peace in that sense. Will every single person on earth get there? I don't think that's going to happen. Yeah. But I think all of us can get there individually and as a group. I think we can do that as this community and create that kind of peace.
I think that's a good way to end our tough questions. I planned some rapid fire questions for you, Father Steve. Just some this or this that I thought would be a fun little way
Coffee hour questions?
Yes,
That's
exactly.
what we call them in seminary.
Yeah. Fun little way to end the
All right.
interview. So, first one. And this is an easy one for you. Dogs or cats?
Well, it's not simple. We have cats, but I love dogs too, and I love all animals, wildlife especially.
Yeah.
So I'm very attracted to all kinds of wildlife.
All right. Hot dogs or burgers?
Oh,
And they can be
my
vegan.
gosh.
They can be vegetarian, of course. Speaking personally.
Burgers, but
But no.
but vegan. I will eat an animal if I know how it was raised, and so I will do that. So I eat buffalo.
Yeah.
But
Okay. Mornings or evenings?
maybe you guys don't know me. No, I am not a morning person. I do not do well in the morning. That speaking of cats, a cat of mine wakes me up at 4 a.m. every morning, and I'm not happy about that. And I don't do well in the morning. It takes me much longer. I think better in the afternoon and evening. So yes.
Okay. All right. Books or movies?
Wow, look you guys. So that's crazy. That's insane. I love movies. But obviously, I'm a book person. Many of you who have been in my office know that.
Yeah.
When I dropped the 18th box of books in the office when I moved in there, I said, maybe this Kindle thing's not such a bad idea. So I think books are generally more helpful in studying and learning, but I've been moved by many movies that have changed me and changed my outlook on the world. So I think well-done movies can do that too.
Yeah.
I have to say books, but
Okay.
movies are.
Okay. Playing it diplomatic, I see. Fair. All right. We're starting to get to the more difficult questions. All right. Would you rather talk?
We're starting to get to
Yeah. Well,
these
at least
guys
with these
had
ones.
me. Okay.
Yeah. Talk to animals or talk to the earth? And I know they're all related, but in the scenario,
Like the
plants and
Ground.
trees and the ground and the ocean.
or like the things that live on top of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, everything. I talk to rocks too. Yeah, I wouldn't want to separate
Have
those
to
two.
pick.
I don't want to cop out on the question, but because most people don't talk to dirt and the earth, I'll say that.
Okay.
But yeah, you know, those of you who know my wife, like, she is a wildlife rehabber, and she can communicate with animals in a way that I can't even imagine. So that's a pretty cool thing to be able to do something like that. So I have to say everything.
Okay.
Christian, do you seriously have to ask that last question on your thing?
We'll see if we get there. Tucson summers or Baltimore winters?
Wow. Okay, that's easy. Tucson summers.
Wow.
Oh yeah, this is way better.
You like to be in the frying pan.
I did. That's fine.
Well, I remember your story about your driving, and you're like, maybe I should, with your arms both in casts.
Right. No, I left Maryland because of the winters.
Yeah.
I guess I haven't told you all that story, but my last winter in Baltimore, I was climbing up a ladder to get in my house because I had locked myself out, and we had an ice storm, and there was ice everywhere. And I said, well, I can't climb up this. And the neighbor said, don't worry, I'll hold it. So he's holding the ladder. I got to the top, and it was just like in the cartoons. The ladder was gone. He couldn't hold it on the ice. So I'm in the midair, just like in the cartoon. So I fall and throw my hands out there and broke both my wrists. 6 weeks later, I am driving to work on my own for the first time, and we had a snowstorm. And I got to the bottom of the hill, and I did 5 revolutions, 360 revolutions in the car in a row. Crashed into the bottom of the hill with the 35 other cars who had just done the same thing. I sat there in the pile of cars and said, I'm not ever doing this again. That's why Tucson summers win.
Fair. All right. Well, I had some more hard pressing ones, but I'm letting you off easy. We're running out of time, so.
Give me the last one.
Huh?
Give me the last
Do you want me to give him
Don't do the last one. You don't know it. You don't know it.
Yes.
No.
Hey, Eric asked for it.
No. No.
This one's a nice little softball for you
Softball.
for Gene, all right? So, Orioles or your wife?
Oh my God, you guys! That's terrible. She does this to me all the time. You guys are awful. You're awful.
I
Of
told you
course,
not
it's
to
my
do-
wife.
Of course. All right. Well, guys, let's say thank you to Father Steve for this time and for
Thank you.
answering all our very easy questions we gave him.
Yeah, they were all softball.
Yeah, exactly. So I just want to close with some events we have coming up. So Family Park Days on Sunday, September 1st from noon to 2
I
p.m.
announced that today.
Yeah, awesome. And that's going to be at Himmel Park. So bring snacks and any nice refreshing drinks that you'd like. We'll be hanging out, chatting, playing games. We're going to kick off the school year right. And Father Steve will be there. Next thing is that the youth group will now be hosting coffee hour every second Sunday of the month. So look forward to
Wow.
that.
Wow,
Mhm.
that's great. Thank you guys for doing that.
Of course. And we will be starting pastries in the playground again. So that's happening in October. So families can come and have some snacks and coffee before the 10 a.m. service. And that's the first Sunday of every month. And that'll be in McBride. And then when it gets cooler, we'll be out on the playground. So yeah, with that, I think that's it. So
Let me just say,
Yes.
you guys asked the most amazing questions. I mean, seriously, I've been in lots of adult groups doing this, and you guys, your questions hit the heart of every major theological issue. Thank you.
Yeah.
Really good stuff.
Yep.
And I hope my thoughts about that were helpful to you, because I know what you're all struggling with every day. So
Yeah.
I hope that helps.
all right. Well, we're signing off. Thank you, Father Steve, and we'll see you next episode.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.